Here we go. And the train's coming by also, right on time. Well, welcome. Well, we've got a couple minutes, so I'll just hold up just a minute or two till we're right at the bottom of the hour. It's so great to see you, Sandra. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and getting a closer look at your work. And thank you for being a guest, for being on Connect and Create. And gosh, I guess it's been exactly a year because it's February now, and it was February when we last saw each other.
Exactly. And
I'm ironically, what'd you say?
I said, and who knew, right?
Who knew? We had no idea. We were just over there, like bumped up next to each other in auditoriums and classrooms and all that kind of thing, at the National Caucus for Women in the Arts in Chicago. I'm actually working on a commission right now for a town just outside of Chicago. We're making a large scale sculpture for the Freeport Art Museum.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. They're building an art park and they flew me there. So it's my last flight and my first flight.
What was the name of the place? Where's the place again?
It's the Freeport Art Museum just outside of Chicago.
Yeah, I heard that part. I didn't hear Freeport. Oh, great. Congratulations. Yeah. Have you applied to any of those Code of Works things?
No.
Listings, just wondering. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Oh, I'm so glad for you. That's fantastic.
It's gonna be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer I invited Jennifer to join us. It's 9:30 in the morning in California, but she had something else but we would have been all together again and like trying to find the next best place to go eat.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And Betsy.
Oh, but fun.
Hi.
Hi, Betsy.
Hi.
You picked a great day to be here again.
I love every day I'm here. Every Tuesday is a great Tuesday.
Betsy's our most regular visitor for Connect and Create.
I love this. It's so inspiring.
Maybe you want to be a speaker one day.
Well, yeah, it might be short, but there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Okay. Sounds like a maybe. All right, great. So we are at the bottom of the hour, and so we will begin. Thank you everyone for joining us here today for Connect and Create. I'm Karina Sephora, and joining you live from my studio in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am super excited. We have a fabulous guest here today, Miss Sandra Davis. And before we get started, I'm going to share a little about how Connect and Create began. It was almost a year ago. It was in March, actually. So next month we'll have our year anniversary. And I had been a guest speaker. You know, COVID, the stay at home had started, and I had been a guest speaker on a friend of mine's. It's kind of like a talk show, right? Radio talk show, except for we're on Zoom and Facebook Live. So a good friend of mine had invited me to be a guest on theirs, the Daily Huddle, and I enjoyed it so much. I thought, my goodness, I invited all of my friends to come and join, and so I thought maybe I need to start one of these. So that's how Connect and Create began, and I am honored to say that hi Callahan, thanks for joining me. Hi. So, Sandra, what number are we? I think we're like 49. Are we number 49? Oh, we're episode 50. I was close, 49. Episode 50. And so partway through the year, I actually received a grant from the Fulton County Council for the Arts. They thought this was a good idea that I was doing this, bringing people together, connecting and creating. And so that's kind of how it began. And that's a little bit about how Connect and Create began. And Sandra, anything that you'd like to say before I introduce you a little more formally?
No, I actually just wanted to take a couple minutes and say, I appreciate being invited, number one. And then number two, you literally never know what that first meeting of somebody is going to lead to. And so Karina and I had actually met a year ago, and who knew that this is where we would end up the following year. with her interviewing me. So I'm really, really happy to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll speak to that also. My last trip before our, sort of lockdown that we've had here, was to go to Chicago. I was speaking for the National Caucus for Women in the Arts, and Sandra and I met at the airport. I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, it was Anne. Anne knew you. That's right. Anne and I took the same flight together. And so we met at the airport in Chicago, and then we Ubered over to the hotel, and that's where it all began. And then we proceeded to have dinner together almost every day, and sometimes breakfast and occasional lunch. And we visited every art museum and gallery that we could, in between talks and lectures. And that's how and then we stayed in touch over social media. And I was thinking, I host this every Tuesday, and so I'm always kind of going through my mind, like, whose art do I want to get to know a little bit better? Who would be a fun guest to have? And so you crossed my mind, and thank you so much for being a yes for joining us. Um, Anything else you'd like to say before I actually give your formal introduction?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, great. So Sandra is going to share today. She's going to discuss about taking advantage of the new platforms and technology and all of these opportunities. And Sandra considers herself a multidisciplined artist that creates with a variety of materials, with a focus on paper sourced from magazines, wrapping paper, tissue paper, and other found items that could be used. Recycling is a large part of Sandra's art. And her art can also be found on used dishes and tabletops, as well as tote bags, that allows the art to be functional. And as an African American female who grew up in predominantly Black neighborhood, in a predominantly, trip over your tongue today, Karina, in a predominantly Black neighborhood. There we go. It was the predominantly that was getting me. Families in her community relied on hand-me-downs, reuse, and upcycle long before it was a trend. So one of Sandra's goals is to collaborate with the communities of color or underserved by bringing art to those spaces. And this collaboration allows dialogue about creativity, race, um, inequities, and the joy of pure expression. So art is not just what is seen at a museum or at an art gallery. And in 2019, she had the opportunity to work with the Women's Shelter. Oh, that's very cool. By having a solo show. And it allowed the opportunity to host a workshop creating small pieces of art that is incorporated in a large fabric piece. And in 2020, Sandra brought a focus on virtual art exhibitions, creating smaller pieces and selling on Facebook. Congratulations. And Sandra is the membership committee chair for the DC chapter of the Women's Caucus for the Art. And she sits on the national board of Women's Caucus for the Art. Wonderful. So let's give a warm Zoom welcome with our jazz hands for Miss Sandra Davis. And the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. So I really wanted to share today. I think there's so much of things that we do, but
Mhm.
last year just brought about such a pivot in how people were producing their work, how you were getting the work seen. And I thought it would be sort of a fun conversation to sort of talk about that journey. Like we had said before, March 14th was what I call D-Day, was the day that my full-time position said, as of today, we are in a work from home status. And you're kind of like, okay, what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Because now I'm physically not ever leaving the house. So what are we going to do? We were also seeing quite a bit of racial unrest kind of happening. There was a lot of political craziness that was happening. And as artists, all these things impact our psyche, and they impact how we produce our work. For as much as you may think that you're not affected by it, it somehow or another does come out through your work. And so quite a few things were happening last year. So I thought I would share some of that. And with that, I guess we'll get started, right?
Sounds great, Sandra.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Certainly can.
Perfect. So these two pieces were sort of what catapulted 2020 for me. The piece on the right, the lady with the mask. In 2019, November, there was a Washington Post magazine article that was more so focused on fashion. And there was this really, really cool photo layout of these women and men in these sort of funky masks, but it was all part of a fashion layout versus a required sort of look for the year. And as people were starting to make masks, and if you had a sewing machine, you were producing all these masks, and everybody was purchasing them online and what have you. And when I flipped back through that magazine, I'm like, who would have thought this is where we would be today? And out of that, this piece was produced. um, Upon closer look on this particular piece, there's several images of African American female faces. And this was more so of a photo transfer of all these different faces on the piece, but I decided to put masks on them. Again, as women, and particularly African American women, we feel like we wear masks anyway. Like, how many of us got up this morning and put lipstick and makeup on? That's the form of a mask, right? So a lot of times we're not showing our true selves anyway. And so that was sort of how this particular piece evolved. The piece on the left is called Looking Over My Shoulder. And I happen to be a mom of two handsome young men. And while all the things that were happening, the death of George Floyd, some of the things that were happening around the police killing, I kept kind of going back to, like, if my two boys sort of showed up on the street, would they be considered intimidating? Like, would they be scary? And so I guess as these emotions and feelings were sort of unfolding, I just started out on a canvas and started writing all these different words. And as the piece unfolded, my manager reached out to me. They wanted to start having some courageous conversations. And she wanted to know what I was working on. And she's like, why don't you share a couple of pictures for me so I can kind of see, just kind of how you feel. And I really, really wanted to check in on you. And at the time, Bank of America, which is who I work for, was really, really conscientious about reaching out to their employees of color, really wanted to make sure that we were okay. And so when I shared these two pieces with my manager, it sort of bubbled up. So she showed it to her manager showed it to her manager. And the next thing I know, I am getting an email from an executive assistant to Monahan, who is our CEO of Bank of America. And they wanted to know, could they share these two images on how our African American associates are feeling? So when I talk about opportunity and technology and the different platforms, not that you wanted what had happened last year to have happened, but because I was willing to share how I was feeling, the organization wanted to hear how we were feeling. I actually had a full article on what we called our Flashgate page for the company. And so here was again an opportunity that may not have ever presented itself, that I'm sharing my work with all of Bank of America employees across the US. Um, and I wanted to sort of start off with that particular kind of conversation because it kept lending itself to other things that were happening throughout the year. Let me move to the next slide.
And thank you for sharing like the whole impact of that. First your impact, the impact on you, thinking about your sons, and then how that ripple effect really occurred throughout your whole company.
Yeah, and we often talk about bringing our whole selves to work. And then, depending on your background, you may not be comfortable doing that. And so I give full kudos to the bank, really recognizing that they had teammates that were really feeling and having some struggles around sort of what was happening. Um, and by the way, we were also in the midst of the first round of the payroll protection payroll plan that was being offered to small businesses. And we were fully involved in that. And so, as a support associate for a business banker, we were attempting to assist our client base. And every day there was something new and something changed. So, not only were you dealing with being home, scared to connect with any person that was outside of your family, wearing a mask, how far can I go, pivoting every day at work. I even probably, I think a couple times I even reached out to employee assistance because I was sort of having a little bit of a breakdown. And I was really, really grateful to be able to have the art to sort of dump all of that out, if that makes any sense. And then this was a piece that I actually did in 2018. And again, it was around, we were seeing some of the social unrest, we were seeing the Black Lives Matter unfold and that sort of thing. And there happened to be an online call at the Maryland Federation of Art looking for um, people of color in Maryland and in Montgomery County that they wanted to share work. So this particular piece, and it's got all, again, I'm working with a lot of words and using the photo transfer images at the bottom and across the top. And again, just sort of putting out what I was thinking, what I was feeling. And this piece is actually titled What's on My Mind. And as my work is unfolding, even going into 2021, I'm finding that I'm using a lot of word and phrases in the work at this point. Because apparently there's a whole lot on my mind and it's all kind of coming out on the canvas. On this particular piece within the exhibition, of course, it was virtual. Maryland Federation of Art gave the artists an opportunity to share their work on all sorts of social media platforms. And then you got to go in and vote for your favorite piece. So there was a juror's favorite, and then there was a people's choice favorite. And this particular piece was people's choice number 3. So I got third place for people's choice, which was kind of cool. And later on, I actually sold this piece on a Facebook Live event. So again, looking at technology and those platforms and just really, really being open to what those opportunities can bring. So again, I got um, someone reached out to me virtually, and Montgomery County was looking for African American artists within the county and wanted to be able to showcase what some of the area artists were doing. So I actually had an article within a local magazine. It was a virtual magazine, but I have never been written about before. I had never been in a magazine before. So, um, and all these things were happening in a result of what was happening in the environment politically and socially. That again, I don't know if I would have actually had that opportunity to share my work if these things weren't happening. And then not being shy about, okay, let's put it out there. Let's see where this goes. And had a wonderful photographer come from the magazine. He's all in his mask. I had recently sort of cleaned up my studio space and got it photo ready for them to come in to do the photo shoot. And again, I don't know if I would have had the opportunity had it not been what was going on in 2020. So here I am trying to figure out how to do Facebook Live. So um, we had, there's a local artist by the name of Larry Poncho Brown out of Baltimore. And if you followed him on Facebook, he was doing these Facebook Live art sales. And if you were interested in learning how to do it, you could register to be part of one of his classes. And so part of the classes would be, making sure that your background is set up correctly, making sure that you had the correct type of lighting, choose an environment that was going to be pleasant in terms of a background. And so then I started Facebook Live in, I believe, June. I would create a postcard for the week on what type of items I would be selling. I would include on those virtual postcards the time and the type of work. And then I would accompany that postcard with a small little, maybe 30 to 60-second video that I could post and advertise on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And that way I would get people interested in what was going to be upcoming for my Facebook Live nights. I would do Monday evenings at 7 p.m., which was kind of like an odd day, but it would give me the weekend to sort of prepare. So by Monday afternoon and Monday evening, I would be ready to go. And I would only be on for an hour, just enough to show some work, and had some really, really great feedback. It sort of forced me into creating very small pieces because I wanted new collectors, right? I wanted them to be able to afford these pieces. Also, it helped to make sure the cost of shipping would be fairly nominal. And these were literally 4x4 little note card or leftover poster board or leftover cardstock. And then I had found these frames that were unfinished, and you would get them in bulk. And I would create these small little miniatures where, if you had a small space or maybe you were just beginning to collect, you could start collecting these smaller pieces. And then I went into 8x10s. I wanted to get a little bit larger and just practicing and having some fun with the papers and the collages and different images. Um, this group of images literally would be where I would have torn a scrap of paper and it would have been left over, and those little scraps would become the images. And you could go on for infinity in terms of combinations, color backgrounds, what papers you're using. Um, and this was probably the most rewarding group of work because this is something that I can do quick. It was something that would, let me see what this color combination would look like. And it would just be this probably the 8x10 pieces were probably the most collected throughout the Facebook Lives. And again, they all take on a little different image. This one has a little bit more of an Asian or Oriental sort of feel. The images would show up on the boxes. And I had, you could go to Michael's and get the unfinished cardboard boxes. And not only would the boxes be a treat, but if you were going to use the boxes as a gift holder, so you would have a gift inside the box, and then the box itself could be used again. And this is just a couple other versions. And one of my Facebook Lives, as I'm showing the boxes, someone reached out to me who was going to be having a women's retreat. So by showing the different styles of the boxes, it led to a commission of 25 boxes for this retreat. So again, here's another opportunity that may never have presented itself had I not been doing Facebook Live. And each one was very unique. Each one had a little message inside. And this may become an annual thing because she does a retreat every year. The images showed up on plates and bowls and things that I could find at the thrift store. And so the base of the dishes were completely glass. They might have been scratched up on the front. They were old dishes that I had. And again, it led to some experimentation. but taking those same type of images and incorporating them in the glassware. And if anybody's ever worked with glass before, all the imaging is done underneath. That way the glass of the bowl or the dish is usable. You don't have to worry about impacting the image. And that's either spray painted or painted on the back. And then here are the bags, and I'll talk a little bit about the bags. In 2017, one of our fabric stores went out of business, and they were selling like the fabric swatches that you would find like at a furniture store. And they were probably like maybe a couple bucks for the swatches. And I'm like, I'm going to buy these. The place is going out of business. I don't know where they'll show up, but let me just go ahead and get them. Had a conversation with somebody who said, the furniture stores usually throw away their swatches. And anybody who works in recycled materials or materials that are found or used, you don't throw anything away. I probably have a fire hazard in my basement because I don't throw anything away. But by letting the furniture store donate the fabric to me, I thought a great way to give back would be able to create these tote bags, sell these tote bags, and then give some of the proceeds back to a particular organization. So that actually led to the partnership with the Women's Shelter. And the quilt that's on the left has incorporated the small 4x4 note cards that the residents created during the middle of a workshop. This piece really hasn't been seen by anybody other than who's come to my house at this point. We want to be able to show it, the finished piece at the shelter, but they are, on a limited staff and limited accessibility, of course, at this particular point. But again, who would have known that working with fabric tote bags would lead me to this type of a project? And again, taking advantage of an opportunity that presents itself.
Excuse me, Sandra, did you say this is a quilt?
Yes.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And when you say note cards, is that on paper or are they note cards shaped fabric?
So they're actually note cards. So it was just
Oh.
leftover note cards, sort of that same practice that I was doing with the smaller images.
Mhm.
When we did the workshop, we wanted the residents to be able to do something similar to the type of work that I had. And this was easy. It didn't require a lot of materials. And it also let the residents be as creative as they wanted. Here's literally throw a bunch of scrap paper on a table and some glue and some paints, and we let them go for it. Um,
That's great.
thank you. And then the next opportunity that presented itself. So the image that's on the right, this was an 8x10 painting that somebody was really, really excited about. One of my first Facebook Live showings. A friend of mine saw the image and said, that would look really, really cool on a scarf or something. Why don't you let me take a look at some of my vendors that I work with and see what we could come up with. So we have the kimono. It's 100% polyester, sort of a crepe fabric. And the fabric is actually created out of recycled plastic bottles. So the vendor fell right in line with sort of my way of reusing things. And we were able to import that image on the kimono. And we did the same thing with the scarf and the kimono as well. So on the very, very far right is the image itself that was created. And then we were able to reproduce that image on the scarf and the kimono. And hopefully we'll have more to come this year with some additional images that have been created. So that's what I have for today, to talk about my opportunities and some of the things that have presented itself for me in 2020. And any questions?
Well, first of all, Sandra, I just want to acknowledge you for really, I mean, the word that comes to mind is like being a go-getter. like, some people say lemons to lemonade, or, anything along those lines, right? Like, here we are. There's, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of people that I've been stuck in, like, kind of suffering throughout the last year, right? And I just want to acknowledge you for being such an opportunist to creating, connect with people and share what you're up to. And I'm going to be honest, I had no idea to the extent, and I'm just going to say I'm like super impressed. And I love the versatility of you creating your imagery. And, I really see your work as like a celebration, like the celebration of humankind, of women, of people of color. It really, your work just exemplifies this celebration of all of that to me, in my
Oh,
interpretation.
thank you.
Right?
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just how you had these Facebook lives and you made the invitations like you were having an art show. I mean, that is so extraordinary. And then how you transferred the work onto the cloth. There's some comments, and there's a lot of comments in our chat, actually, people who love that work. And I just love what you did with the women's shelter. I mean, that was just, years ago, I worked with a collaborative group, and we did a project with uh, Atlanta Boys and Girls Club, with children, like kind of children at risk, youth at risk, and
Mhm.
created some art projects with them. And we actually did some quilting too. So that was a lot of fun. So that kind of brought those memories back. But I could just talk to you all day long, but I know we have a lot of questions. I'm just going to scan through the chat. And while I'm doing that, anyone want to personally ask Sandra a question or give her a comment about anything? You can either, like raise your hand, or there's a small group of us. You can probably just come off mute. Yeah. Let's see, we got
Hello.
you, Callahan. And
Hi, Sandra.
then Zen.
Hello.
How
Hello, Sandra.
how are you? Oh my gosh, I'm so
Oh my,
pleased to see you.
I put this on my calendar and almost missed it because I was watching the hearings on the Capitol. So, but I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much for giving me inspiration. I've been watching you from afar for about 10 years, and I'm really, really excited about your continuing to repurpose. And when you talked about the scraps that you're using now to recreate and working with the seniors, I'm in that senior category now, Sandra. So I'm going to be calling you because I'd like for you to work with some of the seniors. We're working with the Friends of Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. I was on the board for many years, and I also work with the Friends of the National Arboretum. And we have a arts-based curriculum that goes with nature and, with me repurposing. So I'm just excited, and I wanted to just give you big hugs. I want to know whether you have any more studio space than you had when I first met you,
No.
and how during the COVID have you managed to set time aside to be that genius that you are when it comes to, multimedia art and everything else that goes on with your creativity? So did you move into another house to get a bigger studio, or are you just in this, I don't, with family, with your husband being an artist? I mean, when do you get time when you're in COVID to get that energy going? Please tell me.
Well, first of all, Sandra, like I said, I am just tickled pink to see you, and I'm so happy that you're here. And I think when you and I first met, my older son had moved out, and I had taken over the small bedroom, right?
I remember.
And I have now taken over the basement. I've
Yay.
kicked everybody out of that space so I can
Okay,
really, really have room to move around. And
good.
Karina, I don't know if you had known before, but my husband is a photographer,
I
as
remember.
well as if I can say this, and I see Drea online here, he is probably my biggest cheerleader.
Absolutely.
And so when he knows I'm working on a project, he literally will say to me, don't you have work to do? And like, you need to be downstairs right now. Like, why are you still up here? And so he's
Hmm.
really been good and supportive around making sure I have that time. Days that he's out on photo shoots, or if there's a photo shoot at the house, which of course hasn't happened recently, but we try to make sure that we give room for one another in whatever that support look like. Um,
Okay.
I've gotten like these heavy duty industrial shelving units to kind of put all the stuff and make it somewhat look neat and
Mm-hmm.
compartmentalized. But there are days where you can see I look like a mad scientist when I'm downstairs. There's stuff kind of everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But just again, trying to make sure that I have those 2 or 3 evenings that are dedicated just to myself and whatever project that's kind of going on at the time. And knowing that these are either you're responding to an art call or you're responding to something that sort of hit you in a particular way. I've been collecting some really, really cool art books recently that's kind of given me some inspiration as well. But, as artists, you hate to be stagnant and you just, let me try something else. Let me try something else. Marina,
Mm-hmm.
we know that you're a metal artist, but yet you do quite a bit of painting and other things too. And I think we need that
Yeah.
just to kind of keep us going.
Mm-hmm.
Great question, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. And it looked like Callahan wanted to ask a question as well. Are you off mute, Callahan?
Hey, Sandra. I actually am a member of the DC chapter. I'm on the board for the Women's Caucus for Art of Georgia here and the Art and Activism Committee.
Oh,
I think
excellent.
I need to renew my chapter membership, but I really love seeing your work, and I especially like it when I can see the progression of somebody's work and how you, and I think that there is the range of what Corinne talked about, a lot of celebration, but I also think there was um, the terror and the danger in those first two pieces you presented around what was going on with Black Lives Matter and continues and has been going on. It's just now it's out there.
Yes.
And I love the sense of a kind of just like you're just resting in yourself. You're in your confidence. You're just doing this.
Yeah, and and I think I can remember being part of like some little local art critiques. And I remember once upon a time I had said to my husband, I said, everybody has these really deep stories with, why their work was created and, their chakra and they're feeling this and, so and so spoke to them and this aura. And I'm like, my work's really not like that. But I don't think I acknowledged that my work was like that until last year. And it kind of hit me like, I think it does come out. I don't think I actually acknowledged that that's what was happening. And it wasn't until I can remember having the canvas. My little office during the day is in our bedroom. My younger son also works in a financial environment. So he takes over the dining room. And I remember having the canvas on my bed and I'm writing this stuff out and I'm writing this stuff out. And I'm like, I don't know where this is kind of going, but I think I need to get this out. And this was prior to speaking to like a therapist because my husband suffers from some mental health issues that it's very open. We talk about it all the time. But I felt like I was always the one that was the supporter. Like I was the one that couldn't have like the break or whatever. And I remember reaching out to employee assistants and really, really having this conversation. And they were like, well, what are you doing as an outlet? And I'm like, well, I'm an artist and I try to get it out in my art. And I remember the therapist saying, don't stifle it, just let it out. And so all of a sudden all these words and things were kind of coming out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really do have something inside that needs to come out. And now I feel a little freer kind of letting it go. And then being able to share the work with my job really has allowed me to like I don't have to keep this part of myself outside of the job. So on occasion, I now get from teammates, Sandra, send me a picture of what you're working on. We want to see what you're working on right now. And beforehand, it was the artist life of Sandra was one thing, and the Bank of America life was something else. And I've been really, really happy that all of it can kind of come out as the same person, which doesn't always happen in corporate America. So I'm really, really grateful for that.
I just want to say that's a really beautiful model. There's a book called Vasari, The Lives of the Artist, and he talks about the lives of artists in Renaissance times. but more about who they are as people and how artists would work in a studio. And a lot of time it was for the church, but people in the community would drop off some of the bread they made. They'd look at what they're working on. When they finished the painting, they'd have a parade and a big like banquet and march through the street with the painting. And so as you were saying that, it felt so connected to your community and that they're in unison with you, that that's an expression of them in a way as well.
Excellent.
Love that.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that.
So what other questions do we have?
I would just like to say that I think you do express your emotion in your work, Sandra, but not always. I mean, a lot of your pieces, a lot of those, the ladies, I think you told me you call them the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
They're wonderful, happy, and they're styling pieces. I love those. But you have some pieces where you are very, very emotional, and those pieces I think are great.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, yeah. It's good. I'm glad to hear that your work environment is supportive too.
Yes.
That's really excellent. So
Yeah, that's very important to have your work environment there for you. It kind of releases, gives you more creativity because you're not cutting it off, you know, when you go into your work environment. I know I wanted to ask you about your Facebook experience. I'm still trying to learn it, but when you mentioned Pancho offering the Facebook, is he still doing that? Or is that something that you could get on YouTube or something to find out how to do that? Or is it
Yes.
something that you who is successful, you know, can you share that experience and how, uh, just don't say it's hard, please, because, you know, I don't really have time for that kind of technology, but I'm reaching out because recently our two photo groups that I work with, the Photo Craft Club and the Exposure Group, have a virtual exhibit with DC Library. And we're having folks come online and look at the images. And the next thing they're going to want to do is ask how they can purchase it. And so, you know, to avoid having to reinvent the wheel, you know, someone with experience on how to communicate with Facebook and other social media to help, get your product out there. That'd be very helpful, Sandra.
So why
And
don't we connect offline? As a matter of fact, I was invited to speak to the Colorado Women's Caucus chapter on Sunday, and this was the topic of conversation. So as Karina and I were talking before we got started, I'm really getting good at uh,
nice,
these little PowerPoint demonstrations, so you and I can connect.
cool.
There were some really, really, maybe 3 or 4 key pieces to this sort of Facebook Live thing that once you are comfortable in your space to sort of put it out
Mm-hmm.
there, it's
Mm-hmm.
just a matter of getting comfortable with you doing the presentation. So absolutely, let's connect. And Drea,
Okay.
you and I need to do that too with you and some of the work you've been producing lately, Missy. So I'm happy
Mm.
that you're on today.
You have been such both you and Aaron. I just adore y'all. I do. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. But between the two of you, you have been a huge inspiration, a huge outlet, and I am so thankful as to how y'all love on me and y'all check on me. And I watch you and I watch what you're doing, even when I can't check in at the time that you're doing it. When you did the auction, oh my God, I gave pieces to my friend, like, look at what Sandra did this time. I have your pieces on my wall and they come in and go, who did that? Like, you have to check out Sandra, go look at her site and all the wonderful things she did. I show the mugs and I am just so thankful and so empowered. You were talking earlier about how you didn't have a specific that spoke to you in order to have you create. And I started to get out of my depression because it had gotten so bad that I was literally hiding in my closet with my pillow fort. Remember the pillow forts we used to build as kids?
Mhm.
You know, just to keep from having to deal with life, and just the encouragement. And when Aaron told me that you took the pictures that he took, that cracked me up. But this ain't about me, it's about you. Um,
Okay.
I am just so thankful. I love the paintiness above your head. I'm sitting up here looking at it, go, okay, I got to get my hands on that. But just in how things are carrying you through, and you are such a huge inspiration. I just want to continue to love on you and support you. And yes, we will talk.
Thank you, Drea. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad that you had some of your fellow artists and supporters, and it looks like you have that wonderful relationship where you're also supporting them too. So that's really beautiful to see, Sandra. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. And first of all, my friend Shannon Morris, she was on earlier, and she had to leave. She's a really, I met her actually during the COVID. We sort of crossed paths a few times, but she's an art curator and art consultant, and she loved, what was it that she loved? She made a note. She had to zoom out, love the scarves. So if you want, I can connect the two of you if you want to share a little bit more of your work with
Excellent.
her.
Okay,
She's
good.
going to be a speaker coming on in the future.
Oh, good.
So, and all of you that are here, you're invited to come back in the future. Roxanne, who's also been a speaker here, she's in the group and today, and she was asking about the vendor that you use for printing on your fabric. I know myself, I've used a company called Print All Over Me to print paintings on, which is a little bit of a different kind of look. They have kimonos too, but anyway, I don't know if you're open to sharing your resources that you use to print on the
I
stars.
have to find it for you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm more than certain to, however we need to relay that information, I can get that information to you.
Great.
Oh, that would be, thanks. That would be, yeah, that would be so great. It was so beautiful, Sandra. It was very beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'm in my kitchen putting away groceries, so I'm not gonna,
No
I'm gonna
worries.
spare you from that.
I have one of Sandra's scarves and I love it.
Okay, great.
It's a really big piece. It's beautiful. I love it.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, let me just double check our Facebook Live and see if we have any questions on that. And it's been so great. I've loved seeing your work. And oh, I dug around. I wanted to show you this. I don't know if you remember, but there was one of the museum trips. But this is it showing up backwards or frontwards?
No, that's perfect.
Isn't that great? That was it was like a little wallet, and I got it, I think, at the Chicago Art Institute, but I use it all the time. It's like, life without art is stupid, right?
Absolutely.
Right, true.
Here when you bought that.
You were okay, yeah,
We
exactly.
were in gift shop together.
I use it all the time.
Yeah.
So at any rate, we don't have any new questions on the Facebook Live right now. Sandra, I've linked the Facebook Live, so it should have come onto your Facebook page
Okay.
as well. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. Any final comments for Sandra or questions? Anything from you, Betsy? Not to put you on the spot. But if you want, here's our final opportunity. Betsy comes very regularly. She's
Yes. I could say life without art makes no sense. Sandra, I just love all the different ways that you experience what you create your art, and that I have a hard time talking about what I do too. And people even come up to me and said, "Why do you do the handwork?" And I'm like, I don't even know how to explain other than, don't you feel compelled to do something?
Absolutely.
You
And I
know,
think that's probably a good way of putting it. And I think most of us as artists, sometimes we're not quite sure where that voice is coming from that does compel us to create a particular way. We just have to be good about listening and responding to whatever that voice is. And sometimes it's difficult to articulate it to somebody who may not necessarily be a visual artist or a practicing artist. It doesn't always relay maybe how we want it to come out. But I think the work itself lots of times stands on its own. So,
Well, there's that famous sign on I-95. Trenton makes, the world takes. Well, I'm in the Trenton camp.
okay.
okay,
I think artists are. I think artists feel,
right.
it's important to make something.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Well,
thank you, everybody. Thanks everybody who came on.
yeah.
This was a lot of fun. And Karina, I feel like I miss you, and I can't wait for all of us to kind of be able to get together and do real hugs for a change and not this virtual stuff. So
As
Yeah, it's been
Mhm.
frustrating as this year has been, you know, you have to look at the bright side, and there have been good things about it. Like we can have this kind of conversation is really nice. We
absolutely,
wouldn't have done that before,
yeah.
but I miss real meetings.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I finally gotten to the point myself where, I mean, I did create this because I missed going to artist talks, and I missed, like that interaction, that chance interaction of running into someone you hadn't seen in a while. And, one of my big social outlets is going to art openings, and
yes,
lectures and things like that. And I go work in my studio, I go home, I do some fun things in nature, but but it's nice to look at the positive sides of COVID, right? Like, look, Sandra, you may have
Yes.
expanded your business in so many different directions.
exactly.
I never would have started Tuesday afternoon, connect and create, in my busy life of doing all the busy stuff that I was busy doing. But it really has created and pushed us to create new opportunities to connect with other people, especially in those
Yeah.
creative ways. So, at any rate, so there are the pluses of COVID. I'm not saying, like, I'm not taking back away from the lives that have lost or anything
Right.
like that, but as individuals, we've been pushed to try new things. And even the racial unrest that has really come to the surface, maybe this is a time that I've kind of looked at all of this. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, right, home of the civil rights movement, and I kind of look at this as like, maybe this is the second civil rights movement, you know what I mean? Or maybe not
And
a
that's kind of
second.
what it feels like.
It does, right? And so maybe this is an opportunity, as awful it is, again, for people to have lives lost, but there's like this new lens that's bringing it to the surface, what people to say something out loud, and also giving people an opportunity to listen. And I've really been in that camp of an opportunity to really listen, like, what is it that people are really dealing with?
And I think as artists, again, we are visual historians. So
Exactly.
I think we find ourselves in a position a lot of times. It may not be a specific person, or it may not be a specific place, but there's a very specific feeling within the work that's being shown and being created. So
Yeah,
yep.
definitely. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Sandra, thank you for joining us in the middle of your workday on your lunchtime.
This
And
was perfect. This was the perfect getaway too. And when I block stuff out on my calendar, I have it private interview, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, I can't, like I told Karina earlier, why was my one relationship manager still calling me? Like, he never looks at my calendar. He just assumes I'm always available for
yeah,
him, right? But I'm like, nope, nope. I ran downstairs, turned off the computer upstairs. I'm like, nope, this is my time and my time. So
great.
thanks again.
Well, just so you know, you're all invited back any Tuesday. This is episode number 50. And,
Yay.
I have plans to continue. So it's wonderful to have the audience right here. I mean, we do post it on Facebook Live, but it's really great to have the group audience right here. So thank you.
I've been watching you on Facebook Live. A lot of times I don't join. I haven't been joining these. I've
Yeah.
joined today because of Sandra, but usually if I watch, I just watch on Facebook Live while I'm eating my lunch and unpacking groceries and watering my plants, things like that. So
Well, it's nice to sort of.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank
Betsy.
you. I appreciate it.
very nice to see you again.
Thank you, Sandra.
Next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandra, we'll be in touch, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, and my last plug, if anyone wants to share what you're up to, this is a platform that I've created. So please get in touch with me. The best way is through my website, karinasephora.com. And we'll see what we can schedule.
I love your new piece with the boats flying.
Oh, we're photographing that formally tomorrow.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah. So goodbye, everyone. And thank you for being here.
Is that at a gallery?
It's at a, I'm going to stop my live stream now. Goodbye, everyone on Facebook Live. It's actually at a private residence.
Ah.
And